I think we may be ready to go into the question and answer segment.
Sure.
Okay with you?
Okay.
Those are some fantastic tips. I'd like students, if each of you could put in at least one question into the chat. And then I have one question I've really been curious about.
Yeah.
Is there a formula that determines the actual danger rating? Or how do you decide exactly what rating it's going to be each day?
There is no formula, and there's some days that I wish there was. It would make it a whole lot easier, but it really takes just our brains to kind of put together what we're seeing out in the field, and then future forecasted weather, and just making our best guess. But like even the weatherman gets rained on sometimes too. So we're not always right, but we do our best. And the bottom line for us is getting out in the field. If we can get out in the field, that gives us the greatest confidence in the forecast danger rating. If we're, just armchair forecasting while it's possible, we don't feel nearly as confident.
Since trips and guides rely heavily on accurate forecasts, is it possible to have inaccuracies? And has there ever been an extreme shift in the forecast? And what can contribute to these inaccuracies?
That's a great question. Casey, you want to start? Or?
Sure, yeah. Well, just to give you a brief, yes, there have been extreme shifts. Mount Shasta is such a large kind of standalone mountain. There's nothing really around it, that it in a lot of ways creates kind of its own weather systems. We have these classic lenticular clouds, which they look like a big cloud pancake that's been kind of dropped over the top, or it is very clearly what the aliens are coming down to communicate with the folks inside the mountain. But so those clouds can come in somewhat quickly, and I have actually made the mistake of, at night when it was super dark, we couldn't tell what was going on. I actually climbed up into one once, which was exciting to say the least. It's about 140 miles an hour wind in there. We couldn't stand up. We could barely crawl. So
yeah, there's definitely inaccuracies in the forecast, and oftentimes we'll try to just state that. If there's days where we're not sure, we try really hard not to make too many assumptions, that we're basing our forecasts off the facts and the data. And while there is a little bit of assumption in there, we try to do our best, and then state if we're uncertain or not. And a couple of things so the forecast is a tool that you read first thing in the morning before you head out into the field. Once you're in the field, the ball is in your court, and while you have that forecast and it kind of gives you some guiding advice, you still have to be able to make decisions on your own and recognize avalanche danger. And that's where the onus kind of shifts to the user. Having some avalanche education before you decide to get into snowmobiling, skiing, whatever you're going to do, having that knowledge base to draw off of when you get into the field. One of the things that can shift or that can contribute to those inaccuracies is just a change in the weather. We can have a blizzard on Mount Shasta, and it can be a whole different scenario over on the west side of I-5. And so being able to recognize the red flags of avalanche danger, wind, heavy new snow, and then make decisions accordingly, being able to adjust your plan.
So looks like we got a number of questions here. I think I've been looking at them here. We can kind of jump through some of them somewhat quickly just to get those answers. But how cold can it get in the mountains? That one depends on the mountains. Is a broad term, but here on Mount Shasta, it's, I would say, up high, maybe -10 or so. Nick, would you say is about? It's not usually that cold, but that's about on the cold side of things.
Yeah, one of the things we really got to deal with is the wind chill. So the ambient temperature can be, 10 or 20 degrees, but you put some wind in there, you mix the wind in, and it can easily get below zero. And that's a big factor on Shasta and anywhere in the mountains is, you might have a relatively small injury that is not life-threatening, but may force you to hold in place. Thinking about environmental injuries, hypothermia is a huge one. So being able to hold and hover for a while is something to think about on any of your adventures.
And so Oliver's wondering, how long can you survive if you're trapped under the snow?
Good
Great
question.
question.
So the statistically, what we found from sort of the dissecting all the reports of avalanche fatalities throughout the United States and North America is that after about 15 minutes of being trapped under the snow, something like about, I think it's 60% of people have died after about 15 minutes. After 40 minutes, it goes down to about 90% of people. And then there's a much smaller percentage, about 8 to 10% of people do survive longer. But it's a statistical anomaly. And that's either somebody gets super lucky, or maybe they have the wherewithal to like create an air pocket of some sort. But the point being that after about 40 minutes, it's really unlikely that you're going to pull somebody out of there and have them still be alive.
Mm-hmm. And Gwen is wondering, what's the longest amount of time you have spent in the mountains?
I personally, I did a 31 day expedition on Denali with a buddy a number of 5 years ago. And that's the longest for me personally, at one go, without, coming back to a car or something.
Well, it's funny. Yeah, mountains, I guess, could be a loose term. Being that my job is on a mountain, I tend to not go to other mountains, usually go to the ocean or lower places. But did 4 days in the Grand Canyon on a raft trip. That was pretty awesome. I guess mountains you could swap with wilderness, perhaps. So just out camping and whatnot. That's probably my longest, 24 days.
Mm-hmm. Mateo asks, how often do you have to deal with overly reckless people? And how often are you yourselves overly reckless?
Oh, that's a good Nick question.
Each and every day, my friend, especially in the springtime. Right about now is when we start to get all of our climbers on the mountain. So good climbing conditions on Mount Shasta essentially means snow on the mountain. Right now we had about a half of normal winter, so the mountain is looking pretty skimpy as far as snow cover. Snow cover keeps all those loose rocks from on that volcano plastered in, so you get low rockfall danger. In the springtime you have low avalanche danger. The days are long, the weather's good. And so that's the best time to climb. That's also when we get these reckless people. I've seen climbers with saucers trying to sled down the mountain. We get people in Levi's and flannels and cotton socks and poor footwear and no sunglasses. And we deal with them often. And sometimes, it's nice to be able to help these people, and other times they end up getting hurt, and it's really sad to see anybody get hurt. And anything that results in a fatality, having to speak with the family is always really, really difficult.
Mm-hmm. Kaylee asks, do you ever see animals, and how would you keep them from being caught in an avalanche?
That's a tough one. We do see animals. As far as keeping them caught from, I think that's just nature at work there. I don't know how you do that.
Well, at least on our mountain, not all, but I would say the majority of the avalanches are going to happen above tree line, just because of that exposed terrain and the wind building up that. And a lot of the animals that we see, other than birds and small like insects and stuff, a lot of the animals tend to stay down in those trees, whether or not it's for food or that's where they live, or protection from predators. So we don't see quite as much down there. That being said, they probably do, some of them get caught in avalanches, and we might never know. It might just happen in the middle of a storm and we have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. Angela and Marcus are wondering, what's the best part of your job?
I love being outside. I love being of service to people, and I love taking care of nature in this small piece of land here in the world.
And a lot of similar things for me, because I have so many jobs. I love the variety of things that I get to do, and a lot of my jobs involve getting to help people, similar to Nick's as well. And it's, you know, it can be stressful at the time, but it's really, really gratifying. You know, in like, say for an emergency medical call type of thing, or avalanche rescue, you know, the bad day is already happening to that person. And so I once had an instructor in something tell me, you know, you can't stop that person from having a bad day. They're already hurt. Just be the best part of somebody's worst day. And I really, really, I like that when it's very clear that you've been able to make a difference in somebody's experience. And then getting to introduce people to the outdoors. That's, you know, on the other side of things.
Jake is wondering, where can someone find more information about this field other than the resources that you've already shown us?
One off the top of my head, there's a website called Know Before You Go. I'll show you real quick.
I think it's kbyg.org, I believe.
Yeah, so this is a really good site to just learn more about avalanches. There's some really great online tutorials on kbyg.org. Another good one is avalanche.org. And on this site here, you can find education classes that you can enroll in. So, you know, signing up for an avalanche course. And then there's job postings on this website too. And then just, you know, for becoming familiar with the lingo and your own self-study, just reading other avalanche forecasts. So all these colored areas on the map are all avalanche centers and avalanche forecasts across the United States here, mostly western part. But you can click on any of these and it'll take you right to the host avalanche center website and just read up and see what else is going on out there. But those are two good options for continued learning.
Well, that's about all the time we have for the question and answer segment. I just want to say thank you so much, Nick and Casey. That was such a fascinating application of science.